Hi, Sunday School kids. This is Teacher Stephen here with Teacher Alex. In today's lesson review, we'll be discussing about the lesson that we learned this past Sunday and how Israel rejected God's chosen prophet and priest. Now, if you remember from the story, we learned about a man named Korah. Who was Korah? Korah was a Levite, but he was not a priest. Now, this made him very jealous, because Korah's task was to only bring the holy objects into the tent of meeting, but he was not allowed to touch them. He was not allowed to make sacrifices like the priests, like Moses and Aaron would. Now, because of his jealousy that he had in his heart, he rebelled against Moses and Aaron. He rebelled against them by accusing them of deceiving the nation of Israel. And after he accused them, he led this rebellion by gathering others in the nation of Israel to deny and reject their authority. Now, even though Korah and these Israelites rebelled against Moses and Aaron, who did they ultimately rebel against in their sin and the jealousy in their hearts? They ultimately rebelled against God. They rejected God's authority by placing Moses and Aaron as the priests. And now God, being a just and fair God, he heard and saw all that was being done. And he sent judgment. He sent an earthquake to swallow up Korah and his household, all 250 people who had rebelled. Now after this, if you remember, what happened to the nation of Israel? The rest of them, what did they do? Well, they also started to grumble, complain, and accuse. They grumbled against God. They accused Moses and Aaron of the earthquake, even though they saw before their eyes that it was God who sent the earthquake. And Teacher Alex, he reminded us something very important. He reminded us that it's not only the nation of Israel who can have jealousy in their hearts or can grumble or complain against God, but that oftentimes we grumble and complain. Were there times that maybe you've grumbled and complained this past week? Did you reject or rebel against mommy and daddy and the authority that they have over your lives? Did you complain about maybe not getting a certain toy, right? Teacher Alex reminded us that sometimes we can have jealousy in our hearts when we see someone else who has a toy that we don't have, when we worked hard for a certain grade or a sports trophy, but we're disappointed when we don't get it, when God doesn't give it to us. We can be disappointed when we don't get that Pokemon card that we really wanted or that someone else has. There are a lot of ways that we complain, and oftentimes, many times that we complain. And Teacher Alex reminded us that ultimately our grumbling, our complaining against God is forgiven by God through Jesus on the cross, that he is ultimately the high priest who died for our sins and made one and final sacrifice for us all. Now, if you remember from the next part of the story, after Israel started to accuse and complain against Moses and Aaron, what else happened? He wanted to affirm that he was with Aaron and Moses and affirm that they truly were the chosen priests. And he instructed Aaron to place 12 rods, if you remember, in the tent of meeting. Now, what happened to one of those rods, the rod that Aaron chose? Something sprouted out of it. It was flowers and also almonds. And this miraculous sign was to prove that Aaron and Moses truly were the chosen priests and that they did have authority that God gave them. Now, this story reminds us of something else that happened later. This also happened to Jesus, that the nation of Israel complained, grumbled against Jesus. They didn't believe who he was. They rejected the Messiah. But ultimately reminded that God gave the authority as God gave the authority to Aaron and Moses to be the high priest, it was also in his will and his plan for Jesus to be the great high priest who died on the cross for our sins. So as you guys go into next week, reflect and remember some of the ways that you can often complain and grumble against God. But even more so, remember that Jesus is the great high priest who died on the cross for your sins. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's lesson review, and until next time, bye.